Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am here in my new filming space. Well, it's the same filming space. I just painted in here and got my pretty shelf up, and I'm super happy with it. It's come a long way from what it was before and I love it. A special shout out to my sister Cassie for helping me paint and get everything adjusted in here. So, if you are new here, my name is Sammy and I make mommy, lifestyle, and Leo content, and today I'm going to be sharing all about Hyperemesis Gravidarum. If you do not know what that is, that's okay. I didn't know what it was until I was diagnosed with it, and it is a condition that is exclusive to pregnant women. It is very uncommon. It is actually diagnosed in less than 2% of pregnancies in the United States every year, and not very many people know about it or are aware about it. So my goal today is just to give you a little bit of information and share my experience. I do want to preface all of this by saying that I am not a doctor. I am not a board certified physician by any means. This is simply my experience and my journey with HG. You will hear me refer to it as HG and hyperemesis. If you have been diagnosed with this condition or think you may have it, please speak with your doctor and do not go by my word alone. Like I said, I am not a physician, so that is just a disclaimer. So I was actually diagnosed with HG when I was 7 weeks pregnant. I knew very early on that I was pregnant right around the 5-week mark, and if you haven't already, check out my pregnancy journey and my birth story and my breastfeeding journey. They will all be linked, and I will also put them in the cards above, as well as link them at the end of the video so you can check those out if you wish. I had no idea that this is what I actually had, so let me just give you the description of hyperemesis according to the American Pregnancy, just so that you know from the get-go all that it entails. So it is characterized as severe nausea, vomiting, weight loss, and electrolyte disturbance. For some moms, dietary changes and rest will correct this condition, but for others, like me, it is more severe and you actually end up with hospital time and a very strict regimen during your pregnancy. So, like I said, I was diagnosed with this right around the 7-week mark. I had not yet seen my physician, as my OB would not actually see me until the 8-week point. And that is because that's the best time, that's what they told us, that was the best time to confirm our pregnancy and actually be sure that that's what was going on. So up until that point, I had not been seen by my doctor yet, and this was a planned pregnancy. We were trying to get pregnant, and so she knew that going into this. But I started feeling not just sick, like I planned for morning sickness and prepared for that and was fully ready to deal with that. I just had no problems with that at all. But I had no idea that I would actually get something way more debilitating. So I had been a little bit sick, but up to this point it was just mostly nausea, and I could correct it with, crackers in the morning, that type of thing. But when I hit 7 weeks, I started to feel very ill, and I was vomiting about a dozen times a day, and there was actually 3 days where I had not been able to keep anything down at all, and no fluids, nothing. And so it was at this point that I told my husband, I said, I think something's wrong. I think that we need to go to the hospital. At this point, I thought that I had just gotten the flu or food poisoning or something. I did not know, but I did not know that it was an actual pregnancy condition. And unfortunately, it was on the weekend that this happened, and so we had to go to the emergency room. And so we waited for several hours before they got us back, and by the time they got us back, the nurse handed me a cup, and she's like, okay, I need some urine. And I was like, I have not peed in like 3 days because I haven't been able to keep anything down, so I will try. But I don't know if I'm gonna have any luck. So thankfully I was able to give her just a tiny bit, and it was just the smallest bit that she needed. And So as soon as I was back, they sent a doctor in to check me out, and then a nurse came in with IV fluids and a medicine called Phenigrin. And this is to help control the nausea and vomiting at this point. So I had, I think it was 4 bags of fluids along with the Phenigrin, and the Phenigrin for me just knocked me out. So I slept for about 3 hours in the ER while after that medicine kicked in. And then we waited to hear back from the doctor, and finally he came in and he handed me a paper and he said, "We are diagnosing you with Hyperemesis Gravidarum. Follow up with your OB. Good luck." And no information, which granted, he is not an OB, he's a general care physician, and so for him it's not his specialty, but I was left with no knowledge of what this condition was, and so I went home and did what every other person does, and that is Google it. And that might have been my first mistake, because the information out there was very scary and was very much like just this huge amount of information with no real direction on where to go. And so I started reading and I got very, very scared. HG is actually very dangerous for mama and baby, and some mamas do lose their babies because of this. Now, that being said, that is rare, and it's usually in the case where the mom does not know that this is what she has and does not seek treatment. And that's not the mother's fault, it's just that a lot of people don't know that this condition exists, and they think they're just sick and they'll get over it. And so they become extremely dehydrated and very, very ill. And that can result in a miscarriage. So I got very scared right from the get-go. And mind you, this whole time I'm still very sick, and so I scheduled the appointment with my doctor, and I saw her, I think, 2 days later. And so then we started looking at treatment options. And for HG, there is no cure. There's only treatment for your symptoms. And so from about week 7 to week 12, I was not able to work. I had no social life and was very, very, very sick while they tried to find the right combination of medications for me. We tried 4 different combinations before we found out that Unisom and Be Sick worked best for me. That being said, none of these medications completely stopped the vomiting. They just controlled it. So I went from throwing up 12 to 15 times a day down to about 4 times a day, which was much more manageable. I was also put on a strict bland diet, so no fried foods, nothing really. I could handle carbs for some reason, like bread and crackers and things like that, but just a very bland diet. And I lost about 23 pounds in the beginning of my pregnancy. It wasn't until about week 23 that I really started to improve, and it was very, very difficult. It was very overwhelming to be so sick. I was still working, and thankfully I had an incredible boss who really was very flexible and worked with me a lot during this time. His wife is actually an OB nurse, and so they were very understanding. And I also worked with a wonderful woman who picked up my slack and worked for me on days when I just physically could not. When I did work, I would work and go to the bathroom and throw up and come back and sit down at the desk and do that all day long until it was time for me to go home. So it was extremely exhausting. It took a very big toll on my body. And at one point my husband looked at me and he said, is this normal? Is this how most women's pregnancies are? And I was like, no. No, it's not supposed to be this difficult. At least not at this point yet. So it was a big adjustment. It was very hard. I was admitted to the hospital a few times for fluids. Excuse me, because I would get so dehydrated. It was not a pleasant experience, and if you know someone who has HG, please give them lots of love. Give her lots of encouragement. Try not to eat in front of her because she might murder you. Excuse me. It was very, very difficult, I will say. But there is hope for most women. thankfully, right about the middle of your pregnancy, for most cases, you start to really see a decrease in the symptoms. And that was true for me right around the 23-week mark. Like I said, I didn't even start gaining weight until about 19 weeks or 20 weeks. And it was a real constant battle just to eat and try and stay healthy. I was one of these people that thought I was going to be a healthy pregnant mom. I thought that I would eat healthy and I would work out my entire pregnancy and stay active and all of those things, but that was not the case for me. And so thankfully I had an incredible husband who stuck by me and would come sit in the bathroom while I laid on the floor and just threw up for hours. I had a very good friend who was also my birth doula, who was so helpful to me during this process. She was very encouraging and just had a lot of good tips and suggestions for me. I also had wonderful family who really surrounded me with lots of support and would come and cook and clean and things like that. I say cook. They didn't really cook. They brought me popsicles and crackers, but they would cook a meal and leave it for Russell. I also had an incredible doctor. She is a certified midwife, and she was just fantastic. I love her dearly, and she was so helpful to me during the entirety of my pregnancy. And even though she wasn't there for the birth, check out my birth story, she was just so phenomenal throughout my pregnancy. Unfortunately, because I had a C-section with my first baby, she will not be able to be my physician during my next pregnancy, as I will have to have a C-section with that baby, and she does not do C-sections. So, not because she doesn't want to, but because she is not certified to do so. So, even though I won't have her next pregnancy, I love her dearly and I'm so thankful for her. If you have ever heard of HG or have a friend that's really experiencing a really bad sickness during their pregnancy, please do not say it's just morning sickness or things like that. It's very discouraging when people say that, because it's not just morning sickness. It's much more than that. And it's a big struggle. So support them with lots of love. Bring them whatever it is that they can eat. And understand if they cannot make social events or don't feel up to it. I think I slept and threw up for the first half of my pregnancy, and that was the equivalent. That was what I did. That was about it. And it was very difficult to get out socially and things like that. But thankfully I had wonderful people who were surrounding me. I made an incredible friend while I had this. She was also pregnant at the same time, and her baby was born just 10 days before Oliver, and she also had HG, and so it was wonderful to have a friend that had that experience and just got it. So I hope that this video is helpful to you. I hope there's lots of helpful tips here, and if you have any questions, please leave them below. If you like this kind of content, definitely click that subscribe button, and follow me over on my social media. They're all linked below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.